Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
One of the big questions about the Cleveland Browns and Andrew Berry specifically is, how did the offense get to this bad, right? As much as we can praise Andrew Berry for the 2025 draft class, as much as we could praise Andrew Berry for the work that's been done on the defensive side of the ball, you got to ask questions about how the offense has gotten to where it is. Now, I tend to believe that this is a two-part problem here. One, the Deshaun Watson trade, and two, the Browns coaches on offense aren't really doing a great job of getting the most of the talent that's there. They're not a stacked offense. They should certainly look better, though, than what they look like, and it's not to say that they should be like one of the better offenses in the NFL or anything like that, but they should certainly be better than what they are right now. So I tend to lean towards this is more of a coaching problem and a talent development issue from the coaching staff than it is a drafting issue. One of the reasons I believe that's the case, the combination of this really being about where the Browns are, how the Browns are utilizing talent and developing talent versus the acquisition of the talent, is because of how some of the splits work out in the draft. So what I've done is look at all the Browns draft picks since 2020 and split up what picks were for offense and what picks were for defense. So if we go through this, in the first round, the Browns have picked since 2020 3 players. One of those players has been on the offensive side of the ball. 2 of those players have been on the defensive side of the ball. In the second round, the Browns have picked 5 players since 2020. One of those players is on the offensive side of the ball. 4 of those players are on the defensive side of the ball. Now, it is worth noting, right, that most of those defensive players hit that they took. I mean, not most of them, all of them, pretty much, right? We're still waiting to see what Mike Hall is going to be, but Carson Schlesinger looks like he's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. We're pretty solid on him. JOK was one of our best impact players. Grant Delpit is an impact player for this team. Like, those second round picks and even the first round picks, right? Mason Graham looks really good. And Greg Newsome wasn't a home run in the first round, but he was a solid pick, So the picks that they've had on defense have worked out, and they've had 6 selections on defense in the first 2 rounds versus 2 selections on offense. Another thing to consider, and we'll get into that later. Third round split is where this starts to differ, right? So the Browns have drafted 14 players in the third round. 7 of those players on offense, 5 on defense. In the fourth round, the Browns have drafted 8 players, 1 on special teams, 3 on defense, 4 on offense. In the fifth round, the Browns have drafted 8 players, 5 on offense, 3 on defense. Sixth round, 4 on offense, 1 on defense. And then 7th round, 1 on offense, 3 on defense. So you can kind of see how the splits break down there. We got other splits to look at too, but the Browns have spent most of their premium picks on defensive players, and to their credit, they've used those picks on defensive players. The defense is pretty good, right? I think it would be very concerning if the Browns had spent 2 defensive picks, and then like 6 picks on the offense, and the defense was the better unit, right? Like, so at least how the team looks kind of makes sense with the allocation of picks. But let's kind of dig deeper into this, right? Let's look at the top 100 splits for the Cleveland Browns, because I don't think divvying it up by round really tells the full story. So the Browns have had 19 top 100 picks since 2020 with an average placement of 63. So if you add all of the picks that the Browns have had, right? All 19 of those picks. You put the draft selection number and you add them all up and you divide it by the number of picks. The Browns are on average using those top 100 picks at around pick 63, which is not a great number, right? If we pull up a couple of other teams over the last 5 years, I have the numbers right here. Like New England, if you do that for New England, their average draft selection number is at 52. If you do that for a team like Detroit, their average draft number is at 44. So like 63 is not a high number. So like most of these top 100 picks basically aren't at the top part of that 100 or the early part of that 100, which is something to note. Now, of these top 100 picks, 8 of these have been used on offense. 11 of these picks have been used on defense. So you might say, okay, this makes sense. Now, where does the Deshaun Watson trade factor into this? Well, the Deshaun Watson trade is completely responsible for the difference here. Because if you add the 3 first-round picks that the Browns used in the Deshaun Watson trade to get Deshaun Watson, who's an offensive player, then you get to 11 picks on offense in the top 100, and then obviously 11 picks on defense in the top 100. The Browns did invest capital into the offense, but the player they invested all the capital on sucked. And that messed up everything for them, right? That's why the roster is where it is. That's why I don't think that the roster being where it is a condemnation on Andrew Berry or the Cleveland Browns scouting staff's ability to acquire talent in the draft. We're going to talk about this more, but real quick, I want to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Another piece of context to keep in mind when we're looking at these top 100 draft splits, it's not just that the 3 first-round picks would even up the top 100 count offense and defense. It's that the defense, if you remember when Andrew Berry first inherited this team, was dog shit, right? From 2020 to 2022, basically pre-Watson trade, the defense was the bane of everybody's existence. The offense actually was functional. Kevin was doing a good job with the offense. No, he didn't have the greatest pieces in the world, but they were functional enough offenses. We thought Kevin was doing a good job of what he had at the time. The defense was the dog shit part of this team. Remember, we complained a lot about Joe Woods, all this stuff, and the Browns were spending a lot of those draft picks early on defensive players. If you look at the top 100 split since 2023, where the Browns solved their defensive issues, the split favors the offense. They spent 5 of their 9 top 100 picks since 2023 on offense, and 4 of them on defense. Keep in mind, the 2025 draft has 3 top 100 picks on offense. So that indicates pretty strongly that they're going to continue to spend those picks on offense to try to fill the gap from the Watson trade. I know that it's attractive to look at it and say, hey, the Watson trade, it's a fly that we swatted down. But the more and more we see of the fallout of this, the more expensive that trade becomes, and there was a point to where I might have had been hopeful that maybe we didn't get hit hard by this Watson trade, but that's turned out to not be the case. We got hit hard by this Watson thing. He was not able to provide any level of usable quarterback play. I mean, he's basically at the point to where the team is doing their best to make sure he doesn't play because he's been so bad. It's been a disaster. in more ways than one. Like, it's usually when you swing and miss on a quarterback like this, that guy can still provide some level of play for you, some level of value. The Browns invested 3 first-round picks and more in Deshaun Watson, third and a fourth on top of that, and $230 million. And they're not even getting a starting quarterback from that. Like, they thought they were getting a franchise guy, an elite quarterback. They're not even getting a starting quarterback out of that. And when that happens, that's devastating, right? It's not impossible to build out of it. You do got to get lucky, right? I think the 49ers were able to dig out of it, but they got extremely lucky. They got a quarterback in the 7th round. The Browns so far have not gotten that level of luck. And that's really where they're at. The good news here is where the Browns have concentrated their draft picks as far as making selections, right? Because they did use the Watson trade on offense, because Deshaun Watson does play offense. Where they have concentrated their draft selections, they have had success, right? They early on spent a lot of assets in the draft on defense, and those assets worked out and turned into good players and helped flip this defense from one of the league's worst in 2022 to a consistently high-performing unit since 2023. So that's the good news. And that's why I and many others are not as gung-ho about firing Andrew Berry. Because if you look at the evidence, it seems like he's been doing this job, and he's been doing his job well. Again, the Browns have spent most of their draft selections on defense. The defense has been working out, especially their premium draft selections, right? You know, maybe you could spend a lot of 3rd round, 5th round, 4th round picks to try to make up for it. Hope that you hit on players on offense with volume, but that's not going to net a ton of success there, right? Really, the meat of what you're doing is in the top 100 and really in your first 2 selections, right? That's where the meat of your draft is going to be. They've used that to address the defense. The defense has been addressed. Now I want to see what it looks like when they use those same level of resources on the offense. I have reason to believe it can work out based on what we've seen from last year's draft class. But if you're wondering how the Browns got here offensively and why the roster looks like how it does and why the allocation of the draft picks has been the way it is, I hope this offers somewhat of an explanation for you. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. You have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.